What is linguistics? So let's discuss what linguistics is. We see that we spend a lot of time every day in conversation. Normally, in a conversation, we use 4,000 to 5,000 words in an hour. In a radio talk where there are fewer pauses, this speed can be from 8,000 to 9,000. While reading at a normal speed, we may read 14,000 to 15,000 words in an hour. It is estimated that a normal person in different conversations or while reading uses almost 100,000 words a day. So all of us use a lot of words every day. The use of a language is the integral part of human beings. So we use language because we cannot help living, we cannot help using language. We have to use a language. So we see that children start speaking all over the world in different countries at same age, and they undergo the same speaking process. Similarly, we see that the languages have similar structures, whether they are being used in one continent or the other continent, or even in the remotest continent of this globe. They use language and their basic structure is the same. Language and abstract thoughts are closely connected. It is believed that language is as abstract as abstract thought. So they are very closely connected to each other. The surprising increased number of studies in language. As people are engaged in language, for example, we see that the sociologist, the anthropologist, the psychologist, the copywriter, all these people are using language. So the use of language has expanded. So people have started understanding this language. They want to know what actually language is. So language is probably the fastest growing discipline of study in the present era. So the fastest branch of knowledge has been linguistics. So we can say that the systematic study of language is linguistics. It has also been called that the scientific study of language. Linguistics try to answer the basic question. When a linguist discusses language, so he has certain question before his mind and he wants to seek answer of those questions. For example, what is language? It not be confused with a language like English, like French, like Urdu or Arabic, etc. What is language? So he basically studies the basic subject matter of the linguist is language that is common to all human beings. How does language work? So he also uses certain things to understand the working of the language. Obviously, the language works in our brain, and he tries to give some answer to it. He also sees certain theories given by present or the past researchers and philosophers. What does all languages have in common? The contrastive analysis of all languages, that whether there is something similar or they are very different from each other. How does human language differ from animal communication? So this is a very important point. So he tries to understand, the linguist tries to understand that how human language is different from other languages of the animal. How does a child learn to speak? That is very important. How does? I mean, this is very surprising that a child who starts from babbling in a very short period of time, 3-4 years, he is able to speak language, and his brain has the knowledge of the language he is learned from the culture. And this language is so difficult that the researchers are working on understanding that how it works. But the child, very little child, learns it in a very short period of time. How does one write down and analyze an unwritten language? So there are languages which have never been written. So it is the task of the linguist to understand these type of language. Why does language change? To what extent are social class differences reflected in language? So first, why does language change? Language change is a continuous phenomena. If we take English language used by Chaucer and used by today's people of English-speaking people, we find that there is a lot of change in the use of English by the people of Chaucer's era and the people of the present era. And similarly, to what extent are social class differences reflect in language? We know that the different classes in a society use same language, but they use language differently. Their languages are different. So sociolinguistic discusses this aspect. We'll come on to it, that how it is different from each other. Why the language of one class is different from other. For example, you see that gonna and going to, they are the expression of two different classes. Linguistics is the scientific study of language, as I said, because the linguist is studying language as the scientist is studying life. So language mean in general, not a particular language. It is clear that we are not talking about a certain language. According to Robbins, linguistics is concerned with human language as a universal and recognizable part of the human behavior and human faculties, perhaps one of the most essential part of the human life as we know it, and as one of the far-reaching of human capabilities in relation to the whole span of mankind's achievements, and as one of the far-reaching of human capabilities. So this is a very important definition about language, that what does a linguist actually, when studying a language, do. So let's look at the difference between linguist versus polyglot. A linguist studies language like a scientist, right? His subject matter is language. He may discuss a language and may not be knowing the meaning of the language or many other things of the language. Whereas the polyglot is the person who knows 4, 5, 6 languages. So a linguist basically is different from polyglot, because polyglot is a person who is a lover of language, who learns different languages. Whereas linguist is studying language, and many linguists study certain languages and they may not be knowing much about the language. Linguistics does not emphasize practical knowledge or mastery of a particular language. I said a linguist may work on a language and he may not be a master of that language. Linguist studies the ways in which language is organized to fulfill human needs as a system of communication. How different components of language are joined together to make a communicative system. So a linguist, like a scientist, does a scientific study. For example, if a linguist makes a hypothesis after seeing the sentence like a good boy and a tall tree, that adjective in English language comes before the noun. So this is the main hypothesis. So what he will do now, he'll try to testify his hypothesis. So he'll say that first of all he'll come up with this, that adjective precedes the noun. But when he comes to this type of a sentence, the boy is good, the tree is tall, so he'll change his hypothesis and say that the adjective also comes after the noun. Obviously, the first case is the attributive adjective and the second case is predicative adjective. Life everlasting, mission impossible. Then after the second instance, he also again he comes to know that there is a noun and the adjective is coming after it, following it, like life everlasting and mission impossible. So he changes his hypothesis that in some cases adjectives follow their noun. So this is the way a linguist comes to study language. In order for a discipline to be scientific, it must be characterized by three features. Explicitness, that the study that a linguist makes must be explicit. Systematicness, that it must be systematic, not hodgepodge, haphazard. And objective, it should be empirical. It should not be on hunch or on guesses. The linguist makes the language, the study of the language on the basis of empirical sciences or objectivity. So these are some of the features which a linguist does and which are actually involved in the knowledge of linguistics.